Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
What can you tell us about this legislation that has passed? There are so many questions, but I would like you to address, for example, on the industry bailout pieces, the airline bailout. Are there any brakes on this that will prevent us from seeing executives enriching themselves down the line from this?
You're exactly right, Lawrence. This will be in the third bill that's coming up, and the administration and Leader McConnell are going to announce what their proposal is tomorrow. I think there'll be bailouts of the airlines industry and other industries. And look, we can't let these industries go under, and we care a lot about the working people there. There are thousands, hundreds of thousands of good people who are just earning a living. But I'd say a few things. Number one, any bailout that Democrats will support has to put the workers first. We're not going to bail out an industry and then have them cut workers, cut their salaries, and all kinds of things like that. This is for the workers above all. Second, we're going to have to put some brakes on some of these executives. The airlines industry itself did about $300 billion in stock buybacks over the last year. Money that didn't go into the company, didn't go into the workers, was simply sent out to the shareholders to raise the stock prices. That is outrageous, and we're going to have to somehow figure out how to make up for that, because the airlines shouldn't be allowed to do that in the past or in the future. And none of this can go to executive salaries or things like that. So if I had to describe what kind of rescue of the airlines industry that we would support, it's worker-friendly above all. Second, get rid of the corporate excesses, not just during this situation, but permanently.
What can you tell Americans about what is in the legislation that you passed tonight?
Well, the legislation we passed tonight does some good things. It certainly begins the way for paid sick leave and for paid family leave, but it doesn't go far enough. And in the next piece of legislation, Senators Murray and Gillibrand, Rosa DeLauro over in the House have put together much stronger legislation on paid sick leave and on paid family leave, and we're going to insist that that go into the third bill that we're debating, that we're going to start debating or start working on tomorrow. One thing that's very good in the bill that we're doing is the fact that you won't have to pay for your testing and much of your medical care. We don't need people who have the virus or think they may have the virus not showing up at the hospital at the doctor because they get a $200 or $300 bill, even with insurance, with the co-pays and the deductibles. A lot of people can't afford that. So that's a good thing that's in the bill, and it's a good start on paid leave, but we have to go much further there.
I don't know if you saw the president's press conference today, but he once again claimed that China pays the Trump tariffs when, in fact, American consumers and American companies pay every penny of the Trump tariffs. Wouldn't asking the president to remove those tariffs, which he imposed on his own, wouldn't that be instantaneous stimulus?
It might be some stimulus, but the real stimulus we need, Lawrence, and what we will insist, we have three things we're insisting on, or four things that we're insisting on in the legislation. First, any bailout be worker-friendly. I've outlined that. Second, All of those who lose their jobs should get a new form of unemployment insurance. We're calling it employment insurance. Right now, unemployment insurance doesn't cover a whole lot of people. It's hard to get, and you get paid only a small percentage of the salary that you were making when you were employed. We would have the federal government first cover many more people, have the salary be close or the same as to what you were paid while you were employed, and make it much easier and quicker to get. That will send money into the economy in a much more quick, direct way than just about anything else, and it'll go to the people who need it most. And the third thing we really need to do, Lawrence, is a Marshall Plan for our hospitals. And talking about New York City, we have a great hospital system, but I've spoken to several of the hospital executives of these big hospitals. They are short of all kinds of equipment and things that are needed. I asked a few days ago for the president to invoke something called the Defense Production Act. It's a relic, it was a relic from the Korean War, but allows the government to come in and do things. The Army Corps to build new temporary hospital tents with beds. The Army Corps to require certain companies to make the materials they need. We need ventilators. We need more beds. There's even such a shortage. One hospital told me that they're in a local hospital. There's a shortage of the swabs. So even if you got the test, if you don't have the nasal swab, you can't do it. We need to do that, and we need to improve family leave, paid family leave, and paid sick leave on a permanent basis. If we can add those things to the bill that the president's asking for, and we're not sure exactly what he's asking for, we can make this worker-friendly and really help the people who need help the most.
It is Thursday, the 19th of March of 2020. And you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. Well, as you can see, the salon here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, the Bistro Cafe, as well as the chef's table, has all the required social distancing required so that we can all meet up and speak about the issues of the day while enjoying virtual spirits and, of course, a virtual dish or two. So welcome. I should mention, do not diss the grits here on Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. I know there are many people who don't believe that the grit is part of New Orleans culture, but the best grits I've ever had has been in New Orleans. And a secret? Let me tell you a little secret about how to cook grits. Yeah, you might use water. Yeah, you might use stock of some sort. The only and real way to cook grits is in milk. All right? I don't know how much of a secret that is, but it is, well, a stock in trade, as they say. Okay, enough of that. We are under a pandemic order, and there's a lot of kids during spring break who just they want to party. They're trying to get drunk before everything closes down. Well, don't COVID me, bro, please. They are invincible, but we aren't, and they are carriers. And I should add as well, I believe the percentage is at 38% of those hospitalized are between 24 and 40. Better take care, kids. You're not invulnerable. You're not immune to this virus. And, do we call this president, and I know we're not supposed to use the P word when describing Trump. It's right there in the Netroots Radio Style Manual. You can't, we're dissuaded from using the P word ascribed to Trump. But regardless, do we just go ahead and call him a racist? Continuing to call this conflagration a Chinese flu, a Chinese virus. Well, of course they want you to call him a racist, they being the Trump group, because it does deflect from the fact that the guy is a total incompetent. And if you can blame the Chinese, the whole population of China, not their government, by the way, but all of those people, then I guess the base of Trump's support will then ascribe blame to all Asians here in the United States. And it doesn't matter if they're Chinese, Japanese, South Korean, Indonesian even. If you're Asian, you're going to be Chinese. And if you're Chinese, there's going to be a lot of violence perpetrated on you. Look what happened to the Sikhs just for wearing head coverings. Turban-like head coverings. They've been killed repeatedly because they're Arabs. They're not Arabs. They're Indians of sorts. Punjabi. But still, this is what happens. And Trump and his crew don't care. Why? Because they're a bunch of racists. And that Stephen Santa Monica Goebbels Miller is behind it all. They are getting exactly what they had hoped for. Oh, an excuse. An excuse to scapegoat. An excuse to push the most extreme racist policies they can come up with. Yeah, it would be just like Hitler to give everybody $1,000 one time. And then everybody's going to vote for him in the fall? I don't know. I think you need to give people a little bit more than that if you're going to buy off their votes. You might be able to buy off your toxic third of the population, which you already have, and you didn't even have to buy them off. The other 2/3 is going to take a bit more than $1,000 each, please. What do you think we are, bottom feeders like you guys are? Come on, we ascribe to something more grand. At least we should. Oh boy. Well, what's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe? Because we do indeed have a curated show for you today. At the top, that was Schumer saying that any coronavirus bailout needs to put workers first. Yeah, I don't think so. We already have CEOs who are begging for their money. Oh, I'm going to go broke during this time. And what is the ratio between the CEO and the janitor? One time $1,000. CEO, he's got a golden parachute. On the rest of the menu, a surge in U.S. white nationalism has led to a growing threat of violence by factions that advocate for a race war. Wow, just like Manson and his crew. The USDA is appealing a judge's ruling that freezes the agency's food stamp changes that could force hundreds of thousands from the program during a global health crisis. Yeah. Merry Spring. And Mike Pompeo, just like a thug, threatened the International Criminal Court, court staff, and their families with retaliatory actions for investigating war crimes against the United States. You don't do that because we're a mob nation now. After the break, we move to the chef's table where Mexico has asked Interpol to issue a red card detention order for an ex-official in the 2014 missing student-teacher probe. And New Zealand passed a historic law that decriminalizes abortion. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page is our chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. You will then notice our Patreon link, and if you could please become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio. Your generosity in doing so helps us pay our bills. And of course, we are collecting funds to purchase newish machinery. We've gotten a few cables here and there recently, and thank you for that generosity, because with that, we have been able to broadcast 24/7, 365 for 9 years now of Resistance Radio as the founders originally intended. Oh, so many years ago. Probably even around the Magna Carta. That was right there. And we are fulfilling that duty because of you, and we thank you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, it is so simple. You just have to go to @Netroots Radio, and Tom takes care of that, and we thank Tom for doing that. I, of course, take care of @Justice Putnam, and I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes about 10 minutes before showtime, and then I get that linked up on social media, except for Facebook. But we have a social media director, and her name is Kelly, so she does it for me, since I've been suspended for a month for political speech on Facebook. And I noticed that the Trump brats who got me kicked out are still there. Oh, one of them even went onto my Facebook page and was gloating about me being suspended. You would think that was harassment. You would think. But the Facebook Fox censors think otherwise, and it looks like muscular liberal voices, no matter how small they may be in the whole construct of, I don't know, public speaking, like me, yeah, we're out on our ear. I might be a repository for the truth and actual facts, so you got to get rid of me, because it's like a virus. Someone might actually hear the truth and then spread it. Next thing you know, the whole government is taken down because they're the mobsters and everybody wants the truth instead of the lies that we keep getting from them over and over and over. Indeed. If you would like to follow the show on Twitter, do so @Cookbook West. And most importantly, please pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever fine podcasts can be found, mixed in with all the rest of us, because there's millions, billions probably, and we're all in the cloud, floating in the clouds of your mind. Okay, I was wondering how they came up with that. Now I know. Let's dive into this first offering here. It comes out of the Associated Press, and our journalist that penned this is Michael Kunzelman. A recent surge in white nationalism in the U.S. has led to a growing threat of violence by factions that embrace bloodshed and advocate for a race war, and that's according to a report by the Southern Poverty Law Center's annual report on extremist groups. And they said its count of white nationalist groups has risen 55% over the past 3 years, from just a mere 100 in 2017 to 148 in 2018, up to 155 just last year. Many of these white nationalists are embracing accelerationism, a fringe philosophy that promotes mass violence to fuel society's collapse. In their view, the Southern Poverty Law Center said, political activity is pointless. I get that a lot from these Nazis. I really do. Here in Southern Oregon, they always talk about, politics are pointless. It's pointless. We have to go big. I keep hearing that from even people on our side. It's weird. Go big. And they think it's the only way to bring down the pluralistic democratic society they want to destroy. The Montgomery, Alabama-based Law Center described another faction of U.S. white nationalism as mainstreamers, who often call themselves members of the dissident right and are trying to appeal to a wider audience, dapper Nazis. Much of the movement's energy lies in the growing accelerationist wing, which for the most part is organized in informal online communities rather than formal groups. Over the past few months, the FBI has arrested a string of suspects linked to white supremacist groups, including the Base and Atomwaffen Division, that has often advocated for violence and a race war, just like Charles Manson. The man accused of attacking 2 mosques in Christchurch, New Zealand, and killing 51 people in March of 2019 devoted a section of his manifesto to the concept of accelerationism. There is little to suggest that the violence that has accompanied the surge in white nationalism in recent years will abate, the report said. The total number of hate groups counted by the Law Center dropped by about 8% from a record high of 1,020 in 2018 to 940 last year. But the Law Center said the decline does not reflect a significant diminishment of the radical right, given an increased activity among white nationalist groups. In November, the Law Center reported on emails that White House senior advisor Stephen Santa Monica Goebbels Miller sent to editors at far-right Breitbart News in 2015 and 16. The emails reveal that Miller was steeped in white nationalist literature and ideas, the Law Center said. It's clear that this administration continues to invite hate into the halls of power, the Law Center said. Ashraf Khalil of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. The Agriculture Department said that it would appeal a judge's ruling that it would be arbitrary and capricious to move forward during a global health crisis with food stamp changes that could force hundreds of thousands from the program. Federal Judge Burrell Howell, in a ruling late last week, stopped a set of changes that would have taken effect on April 1st. And on Wednesday yesterday, an Ag Department spokesperson responded to an AP query with a terse email saying only that USDA disagrees with the court's reasoning and will appeal its decision. Really? Under the current rules, able-bodied adults without dependents must show they've worked at least 80 hours per month for more than 3 months in a 36-month period to stay in the SNAP or the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, commonly known as food stamps. However, individual states have had the ability to waive that work requirement and the time limit for areas of the state that have high unemployment rates. There, I said it. The changes championed by Ag Secretary Sonny Perdue would have taken that waiver, and it would have taken the waiver ability from the states starting on April 1st, because what fools we be. Estimates from the Agriculture Department set the number of people who would be removed from the program at just around 700,000, just a measly number. In response to a lawsuit brought by a group of state attorneys general, Howell ordered a freeze on the changes, especially now, as a global pandemic poses widespread health risks, guaranteeing that government officials at both the federal and state levels have flexibility to address the nutritional needs of residents and ensure their well-being through programs like SNAP is essential, Howell wrote in her ruling. Ellen Vollinger, legal director for the advocacy group the Food Research and Action Center, said her organization opposes the changes at any time. But the idea of pressuring low-income workers to keep up their hours when they're supposed to be in their homes away from people, what's up with that, Sonny? Is particularly dangerous right now, she said, I would think. You don't want to have workers going out when they're sick and trying to document the right number of hours just to keep their benefits. Government can be a powerful force for good, but government dependency has never been the American dream, Perdue wrote, unless you're Boeing, unless you're the airline industry. Unless you're the hotel industry. Come on, Sonny. We need to encourage people by giving them a helping hand, but not allowing it to become an indefinitely giving hand like they do for the giant corporations over and over when they tank our economy over and over. Bollinger said that if the Agriculture Department really does intend to fight for the SNAP program changes, it might end up publicly clashing with Congress. The economic relief package recently approved by the House also suspends the government's ability to remove SNAP benefits over the work requirement. Offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is Out of Common Dreams. Amnesty International rebuked Secretary of State Sonny Corleone Mike Pompeo over new comments bashing the International Criminal Court, threatening court staff and their family members for investigating alleged war crimes committed by U.S. forces in Afghanistan. Threats against family members of ICC staff who are seeking justice is a new low, even for this administration, said Daniel Balson, Amnesty International USA's advocacy director. Balson's comments came a day after a press briefing in which Pompeo told reporters the ICC is a, quote, so-called court which is revealing itself to be a naked political body. End quote. In a decision applauded by human rights advocates, the ICC announced earlier this month, and reported here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, by the way, that the probe, which includes crimes committed at CIA black sites in Poland, now the article calls them alleged crimes because they have journalistic integrity, but we know the alleged crimes actually occurred because we have seen the pictures. And so black sites by CIA in Poland, Lithuania, and Romania could proceed after the court's pretrial chamber previously stopped its advancement. The prospect of that probe bristled the Trump administration, which carried out what had previously appeared to be a successful bullying attempt to quash the investigation. With the investigation now having a green light, Pompeo renewed his vocal disdain for the court, calling it an embarrassment. Hey, Sonny doesn't just voice vocal disdain. Come on. This is Sonny we're talking about. As I said the last time I stood before you, we oppose any effort by the ICC to exercise jurisdiction over U.S. personnel, Pompeo told reporters. Told? We will not tolerate its inappropriate and unjust attempts to investigate or prosecute Americans because Americans are obviously above the law. We're Americans. Pompeo suggested retaliatory actions would be in store. It has recently come to my attention that the chef de cabinet to the prosecutor, Sam Somanesh, and the head of jurisdiction complementarity and cooperation division, Fakiso Moshachoko, are helping drive ICC prosecutor Fatua Basuda's effort to use this court to investigate Americans, the Secretary of State spit. I've been examining this information now and considering what the U.S.'s next steps ought to be with respect to these individuals and all those who are putting Americans at risk. We want to identify those responsible for this partisan investigation and their family members who may want to travel to the United States or engage in activity that's inconsistent with making sure we protect Americans, especially since they have to go through all the trouble of pardoning these war criminals. If they aren't war criminals to begin with, there's no need to pardon them. And that's what makes this administration a family. All right, let's get to our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world. And we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, The Land of the Women. Portrait of a Lady on Fire took home the screenplay honors at Cannes last year, and it is a rare film. Not only is it written and directed by a woman, but nearly the entire cast is female. Although set in pre-revolutionary France, the theme here, much like in the recent redo of Little Women, deals with a woman's ability to live life on her own terms. Told in flashback, the story centers around a painter, Mary Ann, who arrives on a remote island off Brittany to do a portrait of Heloise, apparently demanded by a remote suitor. But this is no typical assignment. Mary Ann has been hired by Heloise's mother and must paint Heloise without her knowledge. We learn that previous painters had failed due to a lack of cooperation from Heloise. Before she figures out what's happening, though, the two warm to each other, and we discover that originally Heloise's older sister was supposed to marry the suitor, who was identified only as an Italian nobleman. Rather than do that, the sister had chosen to take her own life. It suggested that the family's fortunes are in decline and that the marriage is largely a business arrangement. Heloise also misses the convent from which she's been recalled, which, while not perfect, did supply her with a degree of freedom that her future life would likely lack. This situation is recapitulated in a subplot involving the family maid Sophie, who finds herself with an unwanted pregnancy. Love is found in this movie, but much like the shades of a watercolor, it doesn't necessarily last. Lead Adele Haenel, who looks like a young Kate Winslet, is amazing as Heloise, and Naomi Merlan as Mary Ann isn't far behind. Portrait of a Lady on Fire is an amazing period piece and will definitely warm your soul. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Annie Sneed. Rice Krispies? Rain hitting a tin roof? Bacon frying? How about noisy creatures known as snapping shrimp? Warm, temperate, and tropical coastal waters around the world are teeming with these noisy little creatures. They snap their claws so fast that they produce a bubble. When the bubble bursts, it makes a loud popping sound.
It's a sort of persistent background noise, these snapping shrimp kind of crackling.
Aaron Mooney, a marine biologist at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. The shrimp produce the loud sound to stun prey. So how would these shrimp be affected by oceans getting warmer in coming years? To find out, Mooney and his colleague Ashley Lillis analyzed audio recordings of the critters in their natural environment. They also performed lab experiments with snapping shrimp collected from the wild in water of varying temperatures. And they found that when water heats up, the shrimp start snapping more, and the water soundscape gets louder. They shared their findings in February at the Ocean Sciences Meeting 2020 in San Diego. The researchers aren't sure what's causing this change in shrimp behavior, but they have an idea.
We don't precisely know the mechanism of why they're snapping more often. What we think is that these guys are basically just ectothermic animals. So that means that they're directly responding to environmental conditions around them. And so basically, as you increase the water temperature, it increases their metabolic rates, or they get just more metabolically active. And so they're able or trying to snap more.
If these shrimp do make the ocean noisier as the climate warms, it could be a problem for both marine creatures and humans. Many ocean animals use sound to communicate, and both the Navy and fishermen rely on marine acoustics to do their work.
We never really thought about how that ocean or its own background noise or its own fog is sort of naturally increasing and what we think is, temperature driven or climate change driven. So as you raise those levels, it just gets harder to kind of see through that acoustic fog.
Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Annie Sneed.
In the U.S., about 15% of people who have HIV don't know they have it. If you have it, the sooner you get diagnosed, the sooner you can start life-saving treatment. Everyone should get tested at least once, and those at high risk should get tested at least once a year. If you're pregnant or planning to get pregnant, get tested as soon as possible. Healthcare providers, conduct routine testing according to CDC's guidelines. Screen all youth and adults for HIV risk behaviors. Help patients understand their risk and the best prevention options. If people test positive, link them to treatment and prevention counseling quickly. HIV testing is important. Know your HIV status. See your healthcare provider to get tested or find a testing site at gettested.cdc.gov. You can also get a home testing kit online or from a drugstore. To learn more, visit cdc.gov/vital signs.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution, and you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage, because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
What does the coronavirus teach us about our election system? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. On Tuesday, March 17th, Arizona, Florida, and Illinois held their primaries as planned, but Ohio postponed its primary, as have other states, including Georgia, Maryland, and Louisiana, and for good and not pretextual reasons. The coronavirus could put at risk voters and poll workers, and fear of being infected by the virus could keep many voters away from the polls altogether. But actually going to the polls should not be a prerequisite for voting. Some states allow voting by mail. Absentee ballots traditionally required a good reason why the voter couldn't vote on Election Day, but some states are now allowing no excuse necessary absentee ballots. And some states allow early voting, which increases turnout and would reduce the possibility of infection and fear of being infected. The failure to disallow early voting, no excuse absentee voting, and voting by mail, as a practical matter, these function as a method of voter suppression. Of course, none of these methods for allowing people to vote is required, even though these methods enhance voter participation and democratic principles and the constitutional principle of one person, one vote. Nonetheless, not having these methods of voting still conforms to the laws of the states where the voting occurs, and those laws will remain in effect unless and until they are changed. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1834. That was the day that 6 Englishmen, who would become known as the Toll Puddle Martyrs, were sentenced to 7 years transportation to the penal colony of Australia. Their crime? Forming a union. The men were farm laborers who had seen their wages cut 3 times in 3 years. workers. They began to meet to discuss forming a union, sometimes holding their gatherings under a large sycamore tree. It had recently become legal for English workers to join trade unions. But many government officials had little interest in working people banding together. The magistrates, working on behalf of the landowners, accused the union leaders of violating an obscure law against taking a secret oath. The defendants were sentenced to the brutal passage to the Australia colony for the so-called crime of pledging their solidarity to their union brothers. Few prisoners ever returned from a sentence to Australia. The judge presiding over the case called the punishment, quote, an example and a warning. Learning of his sentence, one of the convicted men wrote the lyrics of a popular union song on a piece of paper. We raise the watchword liberty. We will be free. Public outrage over the harsh sentence quickly grew. 800,000 signed a petition demanding the return of the 6 union leaders. The organized protest garnered results. After serving 3 years of their sentences, the exiled union men were granted free passage home. The sycamore tree that sheltered their meetings became a symbol of the trade union movement in England. Every July, thousands of people attend the Tollpool Martyrs Festival to celebrate trade unionism and to remember the sacrifices of the 6 farm workers.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
18 months. That's the new time frame that the U.S. government is preparing for regarding the coronavirus pandemic. Cases in the U.S. spiked 40% in just 24 hours. Over 9,000 Americans have now tested positive and at least 150 have died. Italy saw its death toll rise by 475 people on Wednesday alone, the biggest one-day jump. Experts warn that without any action, the U.S. may be not far behind. The number of coronavirus cases topped 200,000 globally as people in the United States and in countries across the world adjusted to life under lockdowns and isolation. The central Chinese city of Wuhan, the epicenter of the country's coronavirus outbreak, reported no new infections for the first time, while imported cases surged by a record, led by new infections in the capital city of Beijing. The new imported infections also accounted for all of the new confirmed cases in mainland China, placing more pressure on authorities to screen travelers at key travel hubs. The Families First Coronavirus Response Act was finally brought to the Senate floor for a vote on Wednesday, where it easily passed by a vote of 90-8. I know you're wondering, who are the 8 who voted against helping our nation at its most perilous point in our lives? Well, they are Marshall Blackburn of Tennessee, Jim Inhofe of Oklahoma, Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, James Lankford of Oklahoma, Mike Lee of Utah, Rand Paul of Kentucky, Ben Sasse of Nebraska, and Tim Scott of South Carolina. Yes, all of them Republicans. After changes were made that watered down its paid sick leave provisions, the bill was sent to the White House where Donald Trump signed it into law. So the first phase of relief provides for free testing for the coronavirus with or without insurance, paid emergency leave. Yes, the bill provides 2 weeks of paid sick leave and up to 3 months of job-protected leave to allow some workers to follow quarantine recommendations and care for their family members impacted by the virus. It also includes enhanced unemployment insurance, extending emergency unemployment insurance to help cover workers who are furloughed or quarantined due to an outbreak in their workplaces. Food security. It expands food assistance through the Women, Infants, and Children WIC programs. Food banks, Meals on Wheels, SNAP, and also provides electronic benefit transfer amounts to families who would usually receive free and reduced price meals at school. And in terms of health security, this law now invests additional federal funding into Medicaid to give states the option to expand Medicaid coverage for COVID-19 testing. Lawmakers now turn their attention to a proposal that could include direct payments to the American people. Mitch McConnell, who's stayed on the sidelines thus far, has taken the lead on Phase 3. He's expected to release the details of a $1 trillion plus package on Thursday and begin negotiations with Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. But there will have to be changes when the House reconvenes. In the last day, 2 representatives, Mario Diaz-Balart, Republican from Florida, and Ben McAdams, Democrat from Utah, both announced that they have tested positive for the virus. And some senior House staffers said they'd have to quarantine. Trading on the New York Stock Exchange was once again halted on Wednesday as stocks plummeted, and the Dow Jones Industrial Average officially erased all of its gains since Donald Trump was inaugurated. The Dow on Wednesday fell below 19,732 points, the number it closed at the day before Trump's inauguration in January of 2017. As the S&P 500 fell 7%, trading on the New York Stock Exchange was halted for 15 minutes. This is the 4th time the stock market circuit breaker has triggered a suspension in trading this month amid the escalating coronavirus crisis. But like with the virus itself, it's looking like the economy will get a whole lot worse before we're on the road to recovery. Detroit's big 3 automakers announced they are ceasing production at their U.S. plants due to the virus. Ford will halt production at all North American facilities through March 30th, and GM is also suspending work over that time frame. Fiat Chrysler will shut its facilities through at least March 31st. They're all working closely with the UAW to carry out an orderly shutdown. And new data on this brand new virus is causing the experts to reframe their messaging. Dr. Anthony Fauci, the top infectious disease expert in the nation and perhaps the most credible member of the administration's coronavirus response team, has been leading the charge in warning the nation's millennials and younger that they too are in grave danger.
There are 2 reasons why young people need to take this very seriously. One, you yourself can be in harm's way. I mean, obviously, most of the difficulties are in people who are older and or who have underlying conditions. And many of the young people who have actually gotten into trouble did have underlying conditions. But you're not out of danger. But even as important is that you have a responsibility, a societal responsibility to protect the vulnerable. And you do that, interestingly, by not letting yourself get infected. Because you need to make sure that you don't inadvertently pass on the infection to someone who would not fare as well as you fare because you're young and healthy. So there's 2 pillars to that: yourself and your responsibility to society.
And finally, a reminder from the president, who, according to himself, is...
I am the least racist person that you'll ever meet.
After using the Oval Office address to the nation last week to refer to COVID-19 as the, quote, foreign virus, he's taken to calling it the Chinese virus. Trump was questioned about this by a few reporters at Wednesday's briefing. This is ABC's Celia Vargas.
Why do you keep calling this the Chinese virus? There are reports of dozens of incidents of bias against Chinese Americans in this country. Your own aide, Secretary Azar, says he does not use this term. He says ethnicity does not cause the virus. Why do you keep using this? A lot of people say it's racist.
It's not racist at all. No, not at all. It comes from China. That's why. Comes from China. I want to be accurate.
About Chinese Americans
please,
in
John.
This country.
Please.
The aides behind you. Are you comfortable with this term?
I have great love for all of the people from our country. But as you know, China tried to say at one point, maybe they stopped now, that it was caused by American soldiers. That can't happen. It's not going to happen. Not as long as I'm president. It comes from China. John, please.
Want more? Here's PBS NewsHour's Yamiche Alcindor.
There are at least one White House official who used the term Kung Flu, referring to the fact that this virus started in China. Is that acceptable? Is it wrong? Are you worried that having this virus be talked about as a Chinese virus, that might...
I wonder who said that. You know who said that?
I'm not sure the person's name, but would you condemn the fact
say
that
the term again?
A person at the White House used the term Kung Flu. My question is, do you think that's wrong? Kung Flu. And do you think using the term Chinese virus, that puts Asian Americans at risk, that people might target them?
No, not at all. I think they probably would agree with it 100%. It comes from China. There's nothing not to agree. Okay, how about last question, please?
Oh, just make it stop already. And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a donation. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Please visit NicoleSandler.com, check it out, and while you're there, please click on that donate button.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays, a little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 30 degrees Fahrenheit, though we're expected to go to a high of 64 to 65. That's how you get pneumonia. Abundant sunshine, winds will be light and variable, and mainly clear overnight with a low in the low 30s. Winds will pick up out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. And then partly cloudy skies tomorrow with a high of about 67 to 68, and winds will be light and variable. Pollen is still rated at none, even though I know people are having allergy problems, but right now, I guess maybe because of the coronavirus, they aren't measuring pollen. Who knows? Air quality index regionally is rated good at 25 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is moderate at 4. Barometric pressure is rising at 30.02 inches. Visibility is up to 9 miles, and relative humidity is at 94%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 47 and cloudy with coronavirus. Paris is 70 degrees and sunny with coronavirus. Rome is 67 and sunny with still lots of coronavirus. Kyiv is 63 and fair. Apparently they don't have any coronavirus there or anywhere in the Soviet bloc because they just don't test. Kabul is 58 and fair with coronavirus. Hong Kong is 67 and mostly cloudy with lots and lots of coronavirus. Tokyo is 61 degrees and cloudy with coronavirus. Sydney, Australia is 72 degrees and clear, but they have some coronavirus. San Francisco, California is 48 and mostly cloudy, and the region is locked down with a shelter-in-place order because of coronavirus. And New York is 45 degrees Fahrenheit, cloudy, and you better stay inside because you got coronavirus. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Lisbeth Diaz of Reuters brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Mexico has asked Interpol to issue a red notice calling for the arrest of a former official who led the controversial probe into the 2014 disappearance and suspected murder of 43 student teachers, the Attorney General's office said. Experts and parents of the victims have accused Tomas Zeron, who led Mexico's criminal investigation agency until his resignation abruptly in 2016, of manipulating the probe. Zeron, who was denied wrongdoing, was thought to be in Canada, said a person familiar with the case who requested not to be named because the investigation is still under investigation. Interpol's red notices ask authorities worldwide to detain certain people pending possible extradition or other legal action. Interpol did not immediately reply to a request for comment because they never do, and who would? For us, the order to arrest Zeron is very significant. This should have been done from the start, said Felipe de la Cruz, father of one of the missing students. Their abduction and apparent massacre, I think they was not so apparent, is widely believed to have been committed by corrupt police working with a violent drug gang. Mexican prosecutors said last September that they would probe the handling of the case by Zeron, as well as former Attorney General Jesus Murillo and top aide Jose Aaron Perez Caro. The government's inability to find the remains of the students and hold their attackers accountable battered the reputation of then-President Enrique Peña Nieto, current President Andrés Manuel López Obrador has criticized how the case was handled, while a special prosecutor in his administration said authorities would start from scratch to unravel what happened. The official account from his predecessor's government states a drug gang killed the students after mistaking them for members of a rival group. You know, that happens a lot. It said the killers then incinerated their remains before dumping them in a nearby river. How quaint. Zeron's team said in October of 2014 that in the river it found a bone fragment belonging to only one of the 43 students, whose remains have been definitively identified. However, a team of independent experts that picked holes in the account said that Zeron had visited the location a day earlier with a gang member without notifying the man's lawyer or filing a report on his visit.
Je te donne, c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Anonymous worker bees and Reuters bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. New Zealand has passed a landmark bill that treats abortion as a health issue rather than a crime, a major reform in laws that have been unchanged for more than 4 decades. The reform passed through Parliament late yesterday, Wednesday, by a vote of 68 to 51. The legislation modernizes abortion laws in place since 1977 and proposes that a woman should have access to abortion until 20 weeks of pregnancy with advice from her doctor. After 20 weeks, though, a pregnant woman would require a test, and 2 doctors will have to agree an abortion is the right decision. These conditions for the post-20-week pregnancy were tougher than the government's original proposal. Under the old law, abortion was an offense in New Zealand, and a woman could only legally get an abortion if 2 doctors, count them 2, certify that continuing the pregnancy would result in danger to her mental or physical health. The passing of the bill is seen as a win for Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern's center-left coalition party ahead of a general election in September. New Zealand is the latest country to liberalize abortion laws. South Korea's High Court overturned a ban on abortion in April, while Ireland legalized abortion in a referendum. In the U.S., though, some conservative-leaning states have taken action to curb a woman's right to choose. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period. But you do know that Netroots Radio is going to broadcast on, and we're going to meet up tomorrow for Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.